Computer. Okay, so we are forging ahead in our slow wander through the Shara HaBitachon, the gate of trust. And we just finished the definition of trust. And what was most beautiful, I found. Oh, so for those of you who are, if you're in this book, we are on page 366, 367 in the first volume. And if you want to use the Sefaria is in the chat, so you can use that there. And as I said before, Eid Mubarak to the people who are not here, and Eid Mubarak to the people who are here. And we're coming up on Pesach soon, so I hope everybody is getting their cleaning done, ready, and and not too stressed. Okay. So in the last time we gathered, uh, he talks about the definition of trust. And what I thought was most beautiful about that, and I'm going to go back a page for a second, is he says it's a menuchat nefesh haboteach. Trust is described as the tranquility of the soul of the one who trusts. Trust is a feeling, it's a disposition, it's a way of being, and it's a kind of serenity. Um, and he holds on to that throughout this, right? That this is it's a kind of serenity, a kind of confidence. Um, and that's really what we're shooting for. Okay, we know we have trust when we feel okay, right? It's a trust is a deep inner feeling of serenity and peace. So now figure out, when does trust happen, or how can trust happen? So he says here, there are 7 factors that would make it possible for one to place his trust in another person. And it's always good to begin, as a teacher, we learned that you always want to begin from what you know to what you don't know, right? From your experience to what's beyond your experience. So what is in our experience is trust. I mean, we know what it is to trust other human beings, right? Of course, we're born to our parents, and we hopefully trust them. And of course, we trust the people around us, and we have various kinds of people that we trust. So this is not an experience, at least to some degree, that we don't have. We've all had this experience to some degree. So he starts with what we may know about trust. So he says, okay, what's the first condition for trust? Compassion, empathy, and love. And he uses 3 different words, right? Rachamim, v'chemla, v'ava. One is sort of mercifulness. One is kind of like a kindly disposition. The other is love. For when a person recognizes that his friend has compassion and empathy for him, he trusts in him, and his soul is at ease in regard to any matter with which he troubles his friend. And if you know that somebody really loves you, right, and they really love you, and they really care about you, and they want they want the best for you, then you're going to feel very secure in sharing with them whatever it is that you need to share with them, in terms of whatever it is that's bothering you, or that's troubling you. 2, the knowledge that in addition to loving him, his friend does not disregard him or neglect his wishes. Rather, he strives and is resolved to fulfill them. So that the person, not only do they care about you, but they really want to help you, right? They really want to support you. Rather, he strives and resolves to fulfill them. For if one cannot be certain of him in this regard, one cannot have full trust in him, since one is aware of the latter's indifference and neglect in attending to his interests. But if you have somebody, if you had somebody who say, they really do care about you, they really do like you, but but they're not invested enough in you to actually take your problems and concerns seriously, then that's not going to give you trust. That's not going to inspire you to have a lot of trust in them. Um, but but if the one in whom he trusts combines both these qualities, feels compassion for him, and actively watches over his interests, he will unhesitatingly put trust in him. So you can trust somebody who one loves you and cares about you and wants the best for you, and a person who's going to put in the who's going to put in the time and the effort, going to put in the time and the effort in order to help you. So 3, the one in whom he trusts is strong, not to be overcome in whatever he seeks prevented from anything, by anything from fulfilling the request of one who trusts in him. So let's say that the person loves you. Okay, so they love you, they care about you, they want the best for you, and they're really committed. They're really committed to that. But do they actually have the ability to do it, right? Are they able to really help you? Do they have the resources? Do they have do they have the resources? Do they have the stamina? Do they have the wisdom to help you? And it says, if he is weak, however, one cannot have full trust in him, even if it is established that he's compassionate and involved, for he'll be prevented most times from carrying out his purpose. When these 3 qualities are united in him, trust in him is more fitting. So far, 3 things. So far, 3 things, right? The person has to love you, right? And care about you. The person has to be involved with you and committed to you. And the person has to be committed to your good. And third, has to be able to actually has to have the ability to help you. Number 4. Or as they would say in Europe, number 4. Okay. He knows the ways in which the interests of the one who trusts in him can be served. He is never unaware of what is beneficial to him inwardly or outwardly, and of what can improve his condition. Right? If he does not know this, um, the soul of the one who trusts him cannot be at ease. So again, if the person loves you, right? And the person is involved, and the person is committed to you. And the person the person has the wisdom, means, whatever they need to be able to help you. They're strong enough to help you, so to speak. But they don't understand exactly what it is that you need, right? They don't know you well enough. They don't know you well enough, or they don't take the time to know you well enough. That often happens, to know exactly what what exactly you need at a particular time, right? So they're unaware of exactly what you need inwardly or outwardly. But if he has all these qualities, knowledge of the ways of his well-being, ability to act on them, governance of them, and empathy, one's trust in him will undoubtedly be strengthened. So now that's a lot of qualities, right? So far, we have a lot of qualities, right? He has to love you. They have to love you. They have to be invested in you and involved with you. They have to be strong enough. They have to have strong enough and have the resources to be able to help you. And they have to know exactly what it is that you need at any particular time. 5, the one who trusts is under the exclusive care of the one in whom he trusts from the very beginning of his existence in infancy, childhood, youth, manhood, and old age, the end of his days. When the one who trusts becomes fully aware of this exclusive relationship, it follows that his soul will find tranquility in his protector, and he will rely on him on account of his abounding former favors and continuing support. This will lead to the strengthening of his trust in him. So he makes a very an unusual point here. He says, I think I understand it like this, and see if it makes sense to you. If I'm always, if I can invest my trust in one person, right? If I could do that, if I could invest from cradle to grave, if I could invest my trust in one single person and say to that person, um, you're the one who's in charge of me. I It's a deeper kind of serenity because I'm not worried that I'm going to switch jurisdictions, so to speak. Like I'm going to go from one person to another person, right? But there's this one person who takes care of me, and I know that they're going to always take care of me, right? They're always going to be there for me. They're always going to take care of me from the time that I'm born to the time that I die, right? They're going to be there. And that's so if I want absolute serenity, right? That's one of the requirements, right? Because remember what he said, that this is that ultimately what we're looking for here is that absolute kind of serenity. So he says that means that we don't change hands. 6, the affairs of the one who trusts are entirely in the hands of the one whom he trusts. No one else could harm him or help him to do him good or shield him from injury. As in the case of a slave, this is a very strange example. I remember the last time I learned this book, and I remember thinking this is a very bizarre example. But it is the example he gives. So what can I say? Right? He says, no one else can harm him or hurt him, do him good or shield him from injury, as in the case of a slave confined to a prison under the control of his master. When the one who trusts is in the power of the one in whom he trusts in this way, trust in him is more fitting. Well, it's a strange example because I don't know anybody in jail who feels a lot of serenity. I think I have to ask, maybe Jonathan can speak to that better, but I don't think that that's a big, oh, I feel so good, I feel so serene and comfortable because all of my life is taken care of here. I think it's a very strange example. Um, Maybe prisons in those days were much more luxurious. I'm doubting it. You know, medieval dungeons definitely didn't look like places that I would want to live. But the point he's making is that part of the trust is knowing that like nobody else is going to affect you. It's not like the person who loves you is going to be taking care of you, but then something's going to kind of come from the side and knock you off your feet. Right? It's all of it is in the hands of the person who loves, is invested in you, who's able to take care of you, who knows what it is that you need, is in complete control from cradle to grave. And there's nothing else which can interfere, nothing else that can interfere with that. He says, and finally, 7, the one in whom he trusts is absolutely generous and kind to the deserving as well as to the undeserving. His generosity is perpetual, his kindness continuous, unfailing, and interrupted. And this is a beautiful, beautiful point. That is really important. Right? The person who is roi, a person who's appropriate and a person who's not appropriate. We are not always deserving. Okay, that's our condition. Okay, we're not always deserving of the kindness and goodness that we receive. Okay, so what we want from other people, and we don't want somebody, let's think about it in terms of human beings. Okay, we don't want somebody to love us, and to take care of us and to be there for us only when we're good, right? Nobody wants that because we're not always good. sometimes we're, sometimes we're selfish, sometimes we're grumpy, sometimes we're angry, sometimes, right? We have all sorts of faults, or at least I do. Not everybody has faults, but presumably, but we have all these faults. And so we want somebody who's going to be able to care for us, like no matter how we are, right? And that their kindness and their kindness and their generosity is so great that it can tolerate even the worst of our imperfections. Now, whoever possesses all these qualities together, with all these previously mentioned, meets all the conditions, being worthy of one's trust. One who recognizes this is obligated to put his trust in him, to be tranquil because of him, outwardly and inwardly. It's interesting he uses this expression, outwardly and inwardly. Um, and I think it's interesting. I guess sort of in his behavior, Bigiloi v'nistaro says both sort of in the way that you behave with the outside world, and also how you feel um, inside, right? Inside. And then finally, in his heart and with his limbs, to submit to him, to accept his decrees, and to judge him favorably in all his laws and actions. So if you really were to come, so if a person could meet all these, if somebody could, let's say somebody, if somebody could meet all of these conditions, then you would be obligated to trust them, right? And you would get to experience, right, that incredible serenity, and you would express it in your outward behavior. You would feel it inside, and you would always trust also that even if you didn't completely understand everything that your benefactor was doing for you, that you would give them the benefit of the doubt. Linda asked the question, what constitutes undeservingness? Are there limits past which we should not help? And well, I think, you know, I think what we're going to find out. So I don't want to give a spoiler alert. The spoiler alert is that no human being can necessarily reach that level of generosity. We can approximate that level. Of course, we should always be imitating the attributes of God. Right? And one of the attributes of God that we imitate is his generosity, his chesed, his mercy, right? To the level that we can, The ability of God, to to be generous in spite of undeservingness is something that I think most human beings don't do very well with. And it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. I would say, just speaking, this is me speaking, just absolutely personally. Um, uh, I find kindness is almost never wasted. Even if it feels like a person is so utterly undeserving, um, I think kindness rarely does any harm. Now, I know people will disagree with me on that. There's all sorts of there's there are some who would disagree with me on that. Um, I years ago, when I was a teacher, there was I give his name. His name was Rabbi Pesach. He was a wonderful person, and he was a big follower of Rav Kook. He's a famous rabbi. And I was trying to decide between being harsh on a student or being kind. And he looked at me and he said, whenever you have that choice, choose to be kind. And I said, why? And he said, it usually works out better. And I've taken that advice, and it's stood me in good stead. So I offer that. Okay. So now we get the yes, yeah. Well, the word Anichka said in her in the chat, it's interesting. God is also all loving and all giving, and He's also a jealous God. He Himself says so. Yeah, that Elkanah. Um, it's a pretty heavy expression. It doesn't mean just sort of jealous. It also means sometimes translated as zealous, right? A god of power and um a god of power and justice. And yeah, that's true. And God is both of those things. Now, for us, the question is, which one do we want to manifest, right? I don't think we do very well I don't think we do very well with the manifestation of harshness. We see, how people behave when they're harsh. So, um, what are reading the chat? What are the potential dangers of relying too heavily on one's own understanding of this? How can trust in God alleviate these dangers? Well, I think part of it is, allowing the guidance, right? Part of trusting in God is trusting in the guidance, even if you don't always understand how the guidance works, right? At least being able to trust the guidance, right? If I trust someone, then I trust their advice. It's interesting that the Zohar says that the 613 commandments are actually 613 pieces of advice. That's a strange thing to say. Well, it's because, you do have a choice to accept them or not. And what's the basis upon which you accept them? Well, just like any other advice, I accept the advice on the basis of my estimation of the advisor. If I think that the advisor if I think that the advisor is worthy, then I accept the advice. So if we trust the advisor and we trust that the advisor gives us the best advice, then we're going to trust his mitzvot. Well, this is Linda asked another good question, right? So in our society, relationships are built in reciprocity. This is describing the relationship of the slave, where there's no reciprocity at all. And when it comes to God, we have an there we have an obligation of of we have an obligation of gratitude and service, which is um, not exactly reciprocal, right? Because we're bridging the gap between finitude and infinitude, between the finite and the infinite. Um, and between God, who doesn't need anything. I know there's a famous rabbi who has made a kind of a big thing online, about saying God needs us. From a kind of Kabbalistic perspective, and I understand what he's trying to say. It's a cute way of saying it, but I would not say that. God does not need anything. God does not need anything from us. Um, but God wants something from us, right? Which is our gratitude and our service. So there is a kind of reciprocity. There's a kind of reciprocity. Okay. So now we're going to find out. Now we get to the spoiler. When we investigate these 7 conditions, we find none of them in any created being, but we find all of them in the Creator. May He be exalted. Right? So if you were thinking about this, right, and thinking, oh, this sounds like my perfect marriage checklist, right? Okay, don't, yeah, just forget that. Okay, this is not your perfect marriage checklist, right? No human being is going to be able to do all of this, but especially the part about, cradle to grave, and from the time you're born to the time you die, it's not going to happen. So, um, that's not going to happen. He is compassionate toward his creatures, right? As it is written, God is compassionate and gracious, Rahum v'chanun. By the way, Rahum v'chanun, right? So Rahum implies a person being compassionate for some reason. It's so Rahamim, right? This is Rahamim comes from the word Rahem, which means womb. Right? It's like a mother's it's like a mother's love for a child. So a mother's love for a child has a reason, right? Because she has a relationship with that child. The word Hanun comes from related to chen, grace, chinam, free. It means for nothing. So God looks for what is good in us and loves us for that, and He also loves us for free, right? Loves us. He loves us for nothing. Rachum v'chanum, right? That He is compassionate and gracious, and He gives the example of the prophet Yonah. Says, and should not I have compassion for Nineveh, the great city? And right, the whole story that Nineveh, they're all horrible and terrible and doing terrible things, and yet Yonah looks over the city and he's thinking to himself, God, just wipe these people out. Please, please, just get rid of these people. And God is like, no, I'm offering them the opportunity to repent, right? Why should I not care? If I care about you, why shouldn't I care about them? Um, Lainey was very cute. She just kissed Malka's hand. That was so sweet. That was so sweet.
No, that was Sivia.
Oh,
She's
Sivia.
leaving her. She's
Oh,
leaving for her
okay.
Wednesday program.
Okay, that was very sweet.
Malka's still here. She won't see
Okay,
her
hi
now.
Malka. But that was very sweet. That was like very sweet. Okay, you made my day. Okay, so he is not neglectful, as is written, truly the garden is neither slumbers nor sleeps. Um, Probably, if you're Muslim, you'll recognize that from Ayat al-Kursi. It's there. Okay, he is all-knowing and invincible, as it is written, wise of heart and mighty in power. Whoever stubbornly resisted him and survived. Yours, God, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victor, and the majesty. Hashem, your God, is in your midst, a warrior who brings victory. Okay, so he brings you lots of verses to show you that God is powerful, that God is kind, that God is right, that God is great. So God meets all of these seven conditions in a way that no human being, can. So he alone governs man from the beginning of his existence and development, as it says, is he not your father who created you? Um, he made you and established you, right? Once again, he's bringing all these verses. Those are from Devarim, from the book of Deuteronomy, now from Tehillim, from Psalms. I have been supported by you from the womb, from my mother's belly. You removed me. Have you not poured me out like milk and curdled me like cheese? What a great description of the embryonic process, right? Like curdling cheese. Um, I remember looking at the ultrasound and when my daughter was when thinking, so this is what they're comparing to curdling cheese. I don't know. It's an interesting metaphor. Um, and so at the end of the chapter, that's from the book of Iyov. So Job. So gain and loss are not controlled by man. We are in the hands of the Creator alone. As it says, who has spoken and it came to pass until God has commanded? It's not from the mouth of the Most High that good and evil come. So again, from the book of Lamentations, right? That everything is in the hands of God. Right? It rises only from the hand of God. And grass dries up, flowers wither, but the word of our God stands forever. Surely people are but grass. This attribute has already been sufficiently explained in the third treatise of the book. So that God is in control of everything. We are temporary, and we're in his control and in his hands at all times. And his generosity, right? His generosity is universal, and his kindness all embracing, as says Tov Hashem L'Kol, V'Rachamav V'Kol Ma'asav. That God is good to all, and his mercy is upon all his works. And then again, gives food to all flesh, for his love endures forever. You open your hand and satisfy every living thing with blessing. So again, the Torah repeats over and over again about how it is that God provides for not only for the provision of all human beings, the provision of all things in of all things in creation, uh, and again, when it says Tov Lakol, right? Tov Hashem Lakol, God is good to everyone. That even the things that even the things that we do not experience in a revealed way as being good, right, are nevertheless good. That's a kind of a deeper level. You might say, okay, well, if God is so generous and good, then why is there bad in the world? Why is there negativity in the world? Why is there suffering in the world? And the the difficult answer is that that's also good, but not in a way that is revealed to us, right? In a way that's right, not in a way that's revealed to us. Okay. Which is significant. I just, I always point to a beautiful discussion in the Talmud. I probably mentioned it before, that it says in the Mishnah that you should bless God for the bad just like the good. And the Talmud asked the question was, what exactly does that mean? Right? Does it mean, right, that when something good happens to you, you should say, yay, God, right? And then when something bad happens to you, you should say, yay, God, right? Is that what you should do? And they said, well, no. He says, just like when something good happens to you, you say, yay, God. Actually, you say, Tov Metiv, you say, God, you are good and you do good, right? That's the prayer, but right? It's yay, God. And when something bad happens to you, you say, Baruch Denet, says, blessed is the true judge. Oh, okay, I don't know why this is happening, but I trust your judgment. Okay, and it's not an ecstatic expression of joy, right? It's an expression of resignation, right? Expression of resignation. And then of course the Talmud asks the question, says, well, wait a second. I mean, if everything that God does is good, then why don't we just say, yay, God, for everything that happens? And the answer to that is, that's for the world to come, that's not for here, right? Here we have to go by our experience, right? We have to go by our experience. And even if our experience is different, so for one person, something might be positive, or something might be negative, So, when Trump wins, one person is going to say Tov Metiv, and one person is going to say Baruch Ben Emet. It depends, right? Some people are going to say different things depending upon about their goals and values. Okay. Oh, hold on. Question in the chat. Hold on. Think reference slave master, because the master take care of a slave and all their needs, even more than they did for their family and themselves, at least according to letters. Yes. So that's true. In Torah law, in Torah law, a slave master, there's a line in the Talmud that says, a person who acquires a slave acquires a master, right? The slave has more power than you do in certain respects, because your obligations to the slave are so great that, if you only have one pillow, the pillow goes to your slave, not to you, right? It goes to your slave, not to you, because you've taken on the obligation of taking care of that person, and that's an absolute obligation. So maybe that's the idea, that this is kind of an absolute obligation. There's no way of getting around it. You can't make any excuses and I don't sleep well without my pillow. No, you have to give him the pillow. Okay. So when it becomes clear to a person, and he grasps firmly the true nature of the Creator's kindness, he will trust in him, surrender him completely to him, leave the guidance of his life to him, never suspect his judgment, nor be angered at what he has chosen for him. As David, peace be upon him, said, I lift up the cup of salvation and call out with God's name. And again, he says, I found trouble and sorrow, and I called out with God's name. As I mentioned, by the way, in the last in the Psalm class, this idea of calling out to God's name, when we call to somebody who feels distant. So he's saying that this is a time referring to the time when King David felt a sense of distance, like he felt like he was under pressure, he was in pain, he was suffering. And he says even then, because he had come to this trust in God, right, he would call out to God, even though at that moment God felt distant in his time of trouble. And we can stop there because that's actually the end of the second chapter, and it's 1:45. So that's like perfect. So thoughts? Baruch Dainemet to Moshe the cat. Any other thoughts, ideas, objections, fistfights? Okay. Well, thank you everybody for coming today and being part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I hope to see you very soon. If you have any questions, any thoughts, please, you know how to find me. There's also the Psalms chat. You can use that for this also. And if you have any questions or thoughts, and I look forward to talking to everybody, and I hope all is well. Okay. Bye. Did you have a question, Lane? No, I'm just saying goodbye. Okay, bye-bye.